Kia ora and good morning, everyone. My name is Karin Pretorius. I am part of the engineering leadership team at ASB. I will be filling in for Victoria today, who unfortunately had something urgent come up last minute and isn't able to make it. It is my privilege to MC today's Global Women virtual event on Solving for X, Closing the Gender Gap. While future jobs don't even exist yet, we know that 80% of those will require maths and science skills. So there is a lot of opportunity for women to pursue careers in this field. I will shortly welcome Dr. Mahsa Mohaghegh and Mike Smith. The three of us are your panelists today. You will have the opportunity to ask us some questions at the end of the session. You can post your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Please feel free to do so throughout the session. Now, let me welcome Dr. Mahsa Mohaghegh. Some of you may already know Mahsa, but for those who have not met her yet, Mahsa is a senior lecturer and the Director of Women in Technology at Auckland University of Technology. She is a computer engineer with a broad background in technology and an advocate for taking early action to prepare for the digital disruption that is impacting all industry sectors. Mahsa is also the founder of director of She Sharp, which aims to inspire and encourage more girls to pursue tech careers and to bridge the industry gender gap. Welcome, Mahsa. Thank you for being here today.
Kia ora katoa. Thank you, Karin, for your kind introduction. Hope you're all doing well in these uncertain times. It's a great honor to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. And with us is also Mike Smith. Welcome, Mike. Mike is an established leader in the New Zealand IT sector and has held a number of executive positions in leading New Zealand ICT companies. He is the Managing Director of IBM New Zealand, a role he has held since October 2016. Prior to this, Mike was GM of Cloud and Sourcing at Spark Digital. He is a board representative on the NZ Tech Alliance, which aims to connect, promote, and advance the technology ecosystem in New Zealand, and is also the president of the American Chamber of Commerce New Zealand. Thank you, Mike. I am looking forward to understanding more of what you and IBM do to help fill the gender gap.
Kia ora, thank you for the invitation. Great to be here. I'm looking forward to this session.
Thank you. So let's get right into it. I am going to ask each of you some questions to better understand your views on STEM gender gap, starting with you, Mahsa. Can you please provide us with some insight into what you see as the biggest barriers for girls to participate and progress in STEM subjects at both a school and a higher education level?
Sure. So I can only talk about my own experience. So one thing I found by experience in this tech sector is that unfortunately, this field, there is a lot of stereotyping terminology that can really put girls off and really feeds that social perception that the tech is more male field. And I think there is a real need for us to rethink the way that we market technology to our next generation. Rather than selling technology like it is a cool, geeky field where you get to play behind the computers all day long, I think it is very important for us to take a human-centric approach and rebrand technology as it is a field that potential to transform lives, to solve human problems, to make the world a better place. And I really believe that by rethinking the culture that we're promoting, we will have a big effect in how our next generation going to choose what they want to study in the future. One of the problems we have today that is our girls are facing peer pressure, parental expectation, social expectation, and all these stereotypes that promoted and ingrained by our pop culture, Hollywood movies. There's a lot of missed opportunity, misunderstanding for our girls at the moment. As a result of that, we are losing a lot of talent. And I think this is all happening because of this. We really need to change that. What society thinks about an engineer, about the technology expert, a computer scientist. And I think one of the most powerful way that we can accomplish is by highlighting and profiling role models. I often say that you can be who you can't see, and I think this is really important. I was thinking about another, probably perhaps a challenge and issue. And to me, it is the big presence of imposter syndrome in women in tech. And this is only because of the gender gap. Some women, they manage quite well despite this, but the reality is for majority of especially girls in the field, it is daunting to be part of the minority. There is also a lot of external factors like, just the preference of male candidate over a female candidate, despite both having exactly the same, qualification and skills. Also, unconscious bias, it is huge in this field. And in some cases, even a general lack of respect for women, usually unconscious, but sometimes quite open as well. And I think all of these things, they can create a really situation for women that it feels like an uphill battle.
Thank you, Mahsa. That is really, really insightful. And I agree with you completely how important role models are to us girls in this day and age. Okay, Mike, over to you. Could you please share with us some of the challenges that you face in encouraging women into tech careers at IBM and in progressing women through this career path?
Thank you. Yeah, look, I would totally agree. I think confidence is a very, very big item. Having enough confidence to pursue a career is an ingredient, I think, that we need to work on as companies. There's only 26% of people working in the tech sector in New Zealand are females. And there's a study by Peterson Institute for Economic Development, a study of 22,000 companies in 91 countries that determined that the presence of more female leaders in top positions correlates to increased business performance. So there's two really interesting data points. There aren't enough women in these sectors and this sector, and if we can improve that, the outcome for the businesses improve as well. So there's a few things that we are doing at IBM, priorities to increase the diversity and female representation. So I thought I'd just quickly go through a few of them. PTech, so our first priority is really attracting and encouraging, supporting females and Maori Pacifica into the STEM world. And we do this through a partnership called Pathways to Technology, or PTech. It's a 5-year partnership between two South Auckland schools, Manurewa High School and Ariri College, Manukau Institute of Technology ourselves, and the Warehouse Group. And it basically links students between the sort of world of work, tertiary study, and entry-level jobs. They start in year 11 and finish 2 years after at tertiary levels. And they build sort of these technical skills, digital skills, professional skills, and work experience. So there's 220 of these PTech schools globally. There's in 25 countries, there's about a dozen in Australia, and now there's 2 in New Zealand. So these graduates will end up being given a first priority, first in line for jobs at IBM and the Warehouse. And recently our global CEO offered to hire an additional 1,000 PTech graduates globally. So we're very excited about that, and we'd love more businesses to join us and establish more PTech schools. Ideally, we'd do one in Christchurch. The second thing we're doing to kind of overcome this is we support Shadow Tech. We've been doing that for years, provides young women sort of years 9 to 11 an opportunity to experience what a job in tech is like. So last year we hosted a number of students at our offices, spending a day meeting a range of people, finding out what different jobs in tech could look like so they can kind of touch it and feel it. We got great feedback from that. The third thing is just we're creating an environment that sort of supports women to succeed by giving them what they need to excel and grow. And so we're removing sort of gender stereotypes around flexibility and flexible working and trying to normalize that for both genders. So we're getting men to really look at how they can work more flexibly and sort of changing that stereotype that it's only women or mothers who need that kind of lifestyle. And lastly, we're enhancing the parental leave at IBM. We'll be announcing shortly a much more gender neutral and supportive parental policy. So I just really want to help ensure that kind of having children isn't a barrier to a career in tech and in IBM.
Thanks for sharing that, Mike. It sounds like IBM are taking part in some great initiatives, which is really encouraging to see within this industry. And so while I am your MC, I'm also a panelist. And so I thought I'd ask myself a similar question. So if I look at some of the biggest barriers for women to thrive and succeed in STEM careers, often we are faced with people assuming we are not going to cut it. So we feel like we constantly have to prove ourselves. I also feel that we can do a lot more around mentorship and sponsorship in this area. I have been very fortunate to have amazing mentors and sponsors, both male and female, throughout my career. I believe these two things can hugely support you on your career journey. As women in STEM, we can provide unique support to other women facing challenges that may be very similar to ours. Okay, Mahsa, coming back to you. Could you maybe spend some time mentioning the gap between girls choosing STEM tertiary pathways and female representation within the industry? How big is this gap and why does it still exist?
Sure. So first of all, it was great to hear some great initiatives within IBM. So fantastic initiatives. Really excited to see what will be the outcome and then how they're going to really change the future in terms of, attracting more women to tech field. In terms of the stats, a couple of years ago, I think it was around 2018, a survey conducted here in New Zealand that they found that on average, only 3% of our New Zealand 15-year-old high school girls, they consider technology as a possible career in the future. And I think this is a really shocking stat at the moment. And as Mike mentioned, at the moment, we have around 26% of the jobs and roles in ICT here in New Zealand that they are filled by women. But when we dig deeper into the different areas of technology, so I found a very interesting stats and report from World Economic Forum 2020 around the gender gap. And they found out that in terms of different areas of technology, for example, in a global scale, we only have 12% of professionals in cloud computing. We only have 26% of the whole professionals in data and artificial intelligence women. And when you're looking at engineering alone, there are only 15% in the global stage. So I think this is a little bit concerning. And I shared in a number of occasions my experience as the woman in this field. So as someone who's been in this field for the last 15 years, I experienced being part of the minority of females in this field. When I was doing my study in computer engineering back in Iran, I was the only female in a class of 50. And I just thought this is something to do with my culture. So I moved to New Zealand in 2008. I was the only female engineer doing computer engineering, PhD in computer engineering at Mahsa University in Auckland at the time. And I started lecturing in this field. And I often see in the classes, specifically in our undergrad classes, we have between 10 to 15% female students. So as you can see, we still have a long way to go. But having said that, it is not all bad. In the very same report, in a global scale, New Zealand takes the 6th place in the top 10 countries for gender equality. I think this is amazing with 79.9%. And there is some definitely progress, but we have to work fast there. And if we not keeping the momentum, we can definitely go backward.
Thank you for sharing that. That is really true, and it's great to hear those stats and great to hear that we're doing so well here in New Zealand, and it's awesome to be able to be a part of continuing to drive this change and helping to support our girls. So I thought, considering that I myself also, as you mentioned, Mahsa, these are challenges that you personally have experienced, and I can relate to some of that myself. So I thought I'd share a bit of what I thought about when I look back at my own career, and I can see, I face these barriers in continuing to choose and progress in this industry. And so a little bit about how I overcame this and how I continue and what has really helped me through this. So I'm very fortunate to have parents who believe in me and taught me from a young age that I can achieve anything I set out to achieve. And I believe that is such an important message for women out there today, is that it doesn't matter what, you know, the movies make you think or what other people are saying to you. It's really what you believe you can do, and that support system is really important. To give a bit of an example of some of the challenges and things I went through, I started my STEM journey by studying software engineering. My son celebrated his first birthday during my first year of these studies. And to this day, I'm a firm believer that I can prioritize being the best mom that I can be, as well as being really motivated and driven to excel at my career. I made a decision to work really hard and believe in myself, despite those who said I wouldn't be able to succeed. And the support from my family, mentors, and ASB have played a really big role in growing my confidence and allowing me to be the best that I can be. And that's really a message that I feel is so important to, you know, all the women around us, and why I think role models are key to removing existing barriers and reducing the STEM gender gap. And by role models, this could be your mom, your dad, your teacher, any influencer in your community, and business leader that you may be looking up to. And on that note of how we can be role models and support our girls, I would really love to, Mahsa, if you could share with us a little bit more about She Shop.
Sure. So 6 years ago, I founded She Shop, a non-for-profit organization to empower women in tech. So it is a networking and learning group primarily for high school girls, female tertiary students, and professionals from industry. The objective of the group is really to address the gender imbalance in tech and to remove all those virtual barriers and stereotypes and provide equal opportunities for all genders in tech. So we are a registered charitable trust, and we have over 1,000 members in Auckland. We hold about 8 to 10 events every year, and we usually host it in our ICT companies. The reason for that, we really want to give the real taste and, you know, real experience to our participants to see what is really going on in these ICT companies, who are the people working there, to break all those, you know, stereotypes behind the field, as well as they show them the opportunity. So it's a place for our high school students to find out about, you know, what it means to be in a tech career path, for our university students to find a role model, and hopefully our professional from industry, they get opportunity to get back to community. So it was really amazing to see the number of girls that through these events, they learned something new. Some of them, they didn't even know that what tech really means. So we, the first part of every event, it is a keynote or panel discussion, someone to tell them, you know, it is challenging to be part of the minority, but it's not all bad. So it's creating a role model for our next generation. The second part, which I really love, it is all hands-on practical. We really want to give our participants a real taste of technology. Sometimes it's around, you know, problem solving, team working to do some, you know, app development, game development, and within an hour and a half, they get to create something, and hopefully they can take it back to their community, to their parents. As you mentioned, Karin, parents, they are the most influential people in every kid's life, and they need to believe about, you know, what their kids they can achieve if they really want to, you know, pursue with the career path.
Thank you, Mahsa. She Shop is a really wonderful example on how, you know, we can make a difference. And I'm personally encouraged as there are more and more visible role models for our girls. I'm just thinking of the example of Nano Girl. It is wonderful to see how she has motivated girls around us. And you said it perfectly earlier on in this discussion when you said it's hard to be what you can't see. So it's really, really great that we have these role models, including yourself, for all the women around us.
Thank you.
And Mike, I'd like to come back to you and hear if you could give your views on what practical steps other organizations could take to close this gap. You spoke a lot about the great things that IBM is doing. It would be great to hear your views on what you would recommend to other organizations.
Thank you. Yeah. Firstly, Mahsa, if you want to host one of your events at IBM, you please let me know, and we'd love to have a session held there and bring some of our millennials and women into that discussion as well.
Thank you so much, Mike. Our first event was at IBM, long time ago, 2014 or 15. We will definitely love to come back to you again.
Fantastic, thank you. Look, I think three things have to come together for anyone to kind of progress and have confidence in their careers. So firstly, they have to have some aspiration. And that's all about seeing these jobs as potentially, you know, inside their career path. The second would be a level of confidence to pursue that. And I think the third thing is kind of this mentorship or building a network around you to kind of help. So I think if aspiration, confidence, and network can kind of come together for somebody, I think that's really quite key. So we're doing, there's some practical things we are doing. So I can talk about an initiative inside IBM Australia and New Zealand called Women at IBM. So there's it's a group that comes together to attract, grow, and develop, retain women. So there's 3 squads and an attract squad. So it works to get female talent through the graduate programs and lateral hires into IBM. There's a grow squad, which works on retaining female IBMers and accelerating their careers. And the third most interesting piece is the allies squad, which is a group of passionate male allies who work to kind of dismantle the systemic barriers facing women in the workplace. Another initiative that we've kicked off is, and I think everybody on this call who's progressed in their career will have had someone backing us at some point. So we've kicked off a reverse mentoring program where entry and junior level IBM people mentor every one of my leadership teams, so me included. So we have a two-way kind of mentoring thing. So I understand what issues are pressing for them and the support they need in their career, and they gain confidence and understanding about the business. So I think that's really interesting. Another thing we've done, we've put 2 millennials on our leadership team. So we asked the company if people wanted to join, give us a 1-minute video or a 1-page document as to why they should join our executive team. And we selected 2 people. They rotate after 12 months. They're full members of the leadership team. They contribute to all our decision making. They're on our email distribution lists. And they gain exposure to our company. They build the confidence I talked about before. And we gain diversity of thought. We gain their input. And interestingly, both of the 2 millennials on the team right now are female, which is fantastic. And the last idea that we implemented was when you're in your job, you often, if you're in development or you're in some form of project management, you know, it's sometimes difficult to show you an experiment with leadership. So we created a kind of an auxiliary leadership group inside IBM. They self-nominated, self-formed. They named themselves the Get Stuff Done team. And they workshopped 3 projects that they wanted to work on just to kind of experiment with their own leadership. And that's been going on for about nearly 2 years. And they rotate out of projects and back into projects when they complete them. And one of them was, how do we attract more people, more women, sorry, into IBM? So that was one of the projects that is still going on now. But it's a sort of self-configured team where younger people, and particularly women, can experiment with leadership and learn what they like about it, you know, make some mistakes, pick themselves up, get some mentoring. And I found that to be really, really valuable. And we've had great feedback on those initiatives.
Thank you for sharing those with us. That's really, really exciting to hear. I love the idea of having millennials inside, you know, as part of your leadership team. And I really, really love the idea of that ally squad that you were talking about. I think that, you know, is such an important part of this journey, is to be supported by, you know, all the people around women and to really get your insights and understanding. So that is a really, really great example of how to help to close this gap. Talking about what we're doing as companies, I thought I'd share a few things that we're doing at ASB that we're really trying to help to close this gender gap from our side. Over the years, we have run a number of initiatives aimed at closing the gender gap in technology. We have an ISOM scholarship that we run annually with Auckland University. ASB have been supporting Bright Sparks, New Zealand's longest running competition for intermediate and high school aged student investors since 2016. We usually ask one of our female graduates to be a judge to provide a role model for the students. We have other initiatives within the bank, such as our partnership with OMG Tech to deliver 2 tech days for children of ASB people aged 8 and 14, with half the tickets being allocated to girls. Some of our people have volunteered to run code clubs for girls. Following the success of this, we hosted a code club briefing evening to connect together schools with more ASB volunteers. And we have participated in Work Choice Day to get high school girls excited about careers in technology. There is always more room to improve, and we continue our focus and drive to have no more gender gap. Now, Mahsa and Mike, I have 3 specific questions I would like you to further discuss, linking your experience, insights, and aspirations. So for the first one, what do we think as panelists needs to happen for us to close this gender gap? Mahsa, could you start us off with this one?
Sure. I think from the outset, what needs to happen, and I really can't stress this enough, is that our leaders and our policymakers, they need to recognize that the gender gap is a big issue. And closing it, it's coming with a huge benefit. So there are so many research that they show that the diverse team and the diverse workplace, they are more effective, they're more innovative, they're more efficient. And I think the reason for that is because the diverse team, they have a wider, mentality. They are more adaptable. They are more diverse. And there definitely has to be appreciation of this value in order to motivate the steps and approaches for building a better workforce. So first is believing it. It is an issue, and we have to really close this gender gap. The second thing that's coming to my mind, it's a conscious effort to hire balanced team. And again, remembering, we're talking about, we just don't really look at diversity and inclusion as tick in a box. We really have to believe that we have to have a diverse team. And again, diversity is not only gender diversity. So we have to have people from different ethnicity, background, age, just to name a few. So we have to actively try to create a diverse team. And I think the other thing we can do is to educate our team. And if it is even necessary, so we have to reshape and change the culture for our businesses. We have to be aware of unconscious bias, and we have to recognize them, and we have to call them out. And we have to be able to identify that environments that they can create imposter syndrome. And we have to educate teams around it and show them really the importance of inclusion.
Thank you very much. I can completely relate to imposter syndrome myself. And one of the things that I have really, which has really helped me in my journey, is to have other women support me and kind of remind me that I should be confident and that I can do this and that I have the skills to share. So I think that that is something that as organizations, we really, really can make a big difference in, is providing those opportunities for women to support women via mentorship and sponsorship. And as I mentioned earlier, it is actually just for anyone to support anyone, but specifically for those people that may be suffering from imposter syndrome and just need to be reassured, for us to help support them. Mike, would you like to add your views on what needs to happen for us to close this gender gap?
Yes, thank you. I come back to the confidence piece of the discussion, imposter syndrome, as it was just described. I think working around building pathways for people to gain more confidence in a safe environment and learn to make mistakes, learn that it's okay, learn to experiment. I think that's really important. I was listening about a year ago to the chief executive of PwC in Australia talking about the lack of gender diversity in his leadership team. And another approach is that you formalize in some measurable way shifting the gender balance. And what he came up with, which I thought was quite elegant, was a mandate within his company that 40% of all partner promotions in Australia would be male, 40% would be female, and 20% could be either. And so I found that was an elegant way of putting in some sort of a process to shift the dial, but do it with a bit of a level of flexibility. It sent a very clear message to his organization. So I think doing some sort of a formal, measurable policy change is an idea. I think, as Mahsa was saying, getting the executive team of a company to buy into this is really important. And so having an entire team believing that it needs to be addressed, the results are better. It's much more inclusive. It's much more reflective of the marketplace and society. So I think they're really important. There is a paper that our IBM research team produced called Priority Paradox. If you Google Priority Paradox, you'll see a link to an IBM paper. It provides an action guide actually on how to increase the number of women leaders within an organization. It's about 15, 20 pages long. It's a good read if you'd like to. So Google Priority Paradox if you want to have a read of something.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And so on to the next question, which we've covered quite a bit in the things we talked about, but Mahsa, I thought I'd come back to you just in case there was something more you wanted to speak on. And the question is, who needs to take action and how?
I think, as you mentioned, we definitely touched on that, but I think industry leaders, more than anyone else, they have that responsibility to use their position and in the position of influence and respect to inspire business leaders, communities, governments to work towards diversity and inclusion. And also business leaders, they can use their position of influence and respect to help effecting change, even just by authorizing a new initiatives, just by providing funding and supports for the groups that they aim to create diversity and inclusion awareness, or even simply just by being a role model for bringing about change. And the good thing is that many are doing this at the moment, and this is very encouraging.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And Mike, you touched on many ways at IBM that is actively happening, and that was really, really great to hear about. So if we move on to a next question, in an ideal world, when would you like to see this gender gap closed in Aotearoa? And is this achievable and why? And Mike, could we go over to you first?
Oh, look, it'd be so hard to put a timeline on it, but the sooner the better. I mean, it's very clear from all research that there's an unlimited and untapped potential in our female workforce that isn't being respected or employed. And so I think one thing that we find, and it's in one of the questions I was just reading before, when an opportunity exists for us for a senior role in IBM, we go to the market and you have a look at the applicants, and that's the catchment pool that you look to for recruiting. And it's often not reflective of society. It's often male and maybe middle-aged and whatever. And that's fine if that person's the right person for the role, but the catchment pool that you work from, often it doesn't help shift the dials, because we had a senior role vacant a while back. It was a woman that left the company, and the only applicants that turned up, the only catchment pool we could work with, and we tried to go very diverse, was male. And so when you have that problem, it's difficult to kind of shift the dial on the percentage. So the work has to start before, and that's why we like what we're doing with PTEG and other initiatives to get younger women interested in the sector. Then they filter through and turn up in the catchment that you can recruit to. Our board is 50% women in New Zealand. My management team was 50% women up until about 12 months ago. It's just worsened slightly. And in our company, we're better than the average in New Zealand, but still work to go. We'd like to fix that quickly. I'd like to fix that really quickly.
Thank you so much for sharing your views on that, Mike. As you say, it is difficult to put a timeline on that, and I think we're all on the same page that we'd like to see the change as soon as possible. Mahsa, would you like to share some of your views on this with us?
Sure. So just like you both, I really love to see that we'll be able to close the gender gap as soon as possible. But interestingly enough, last night I found a really good report that they put the timeline on it. So I would just like to share that with you. So looking at how we have progressed over the last few years, if we maintain the same progress, according to the World Economic Forum 2020 report, it will take us, Asia Pacific region, 163 years to see the gender gap closed. So obviously we really need more effort in this. We don't want to take 160 years, but I think ideally, but realistically, if we could see that the gender gap close within the next 10 years, we've been doing really well. And we all need to work collectively. So we all need to do our own parts as individual. And this is the only way that we can break stereotypes and we can support equality.
Thank you very much for sharing that report with us. That is a scary number to think that it would take that long, and I guess that really can help motivate us to do our bit. You know, I agree with both of you that there is no silver bullet solution. There's nothing that will make a change from today to tomorrow. However, I believe strongly that everyone, as you mentioned, Mahsa, has a role to play every day in encouraging and growing the confidence of our women. And supporting them to achieve the great things that they can do. So thank you, Mahsa and Mike, for sharing all your experience and insights with us.
Thank you.
I think now we can turn to the attendees to see whether they have any questions based on what we have discussed. So for those of you on the call, if you have any questions, please post them through on the chat. I'll have a look to see what we have here and we can get going. Oh, we have a few questions. That's wonderful to see. So I'm starting off, a question from Robin. I am the HOD Science at a large secondary school in Auckland. In year 12-13, 51% of our science students are female, despite only 49% of the school being female. What can we do more to support these young women into tertiary STEM fields? Because they obviously have the interest, motivation, and capability when they are with us. And can I pose that one to you, Mahsa?
Sure. So can you please repeat the numbers on how many girls they do have at the moment in the digital technology class?
51% of our science students are female, despite only 49% of the school being female.
I think this is amazing. So I think that at the moment, what we can do to encourage more. So it is really important to provide a platform for them that they will be able to put that knowledge into practice. And again, for our girls, in terms of, you know, attracting them to tech or science or computer science, it's really important to show them the applications that they can apply that creativity knowledge into something more practical. There are different resources, there are different websites, that there are different places that they would be able to try technology to be able to see that what they're doing, it is not just pure coding for the sake of, you know, coding. They will be able to work with people from different majors. They will be able to see the impact of their work. And I can emphasize more that how much I got excited when in 2020 we had these new digital curriculum that they roll into different schools. And I think we have to support our high school teachers and digital technology teachers in different places to be able to teach these curriculum properly in a school. And the way that we are doing it here at AUT, every year we have computer science for high school workshop, which is funded partially by Google. And we are teaching teachers how to teach technology using some of cutting edge technology and some of the you know, practical aspects of technology aligned with the digital curriculum in New Zealand back to the school. We prepare all the resources for them, so we want them to, you know, to save some time for them, and it is free. So I'm happy to share information, and they're more than welcome to participate. And hopefully we can do a little in terms of supporting teachers to encourage and motivate more girls to come to tech field.
Thank you so much, Mahsa, for sharing your insight on this. I always say that teachers are gold. They have such an amazing influence on our children and on all the boys and girls out there. And so I believe that we have a big part in supporting them to help us on this journey. And so my next question from the audience is over to you, Mike. So Linda is asking, Mike, you have talked about the initiatives that IBM has and are about to implement, which all sound excellent. What outcomes have you seen? Do you have measures of success that you are trying to achieve?
Well, thank you. Yeah, we do measure. We measure everything from pay through to gender balance. So, as I mentioned before, you know, you sort of, sometimes we take a step forward and then we have to take a step back because of the things I mentioned before. The catchment, the people coming through aren't able to give us the diversity that we want. I read a report from Forrester about a month ago, Forrester Research, a research company. There will be 1.2 million jobs available in cyber in 2020 for which there are no candidates. In other words, more demand, 1.2 million jobs globally for this particular slice of the IT sector. So I think with that sort of demand and that sort of opportunity for careers, and then to your point earlier about the schools and the passion that people have in trying to get STEM into the curriculum and wider, the issue I see seems to be somewhere in between the two. So the tertiary process, the micro-credential process, getting people work-ready, job-ready quickly is probably the challenge. And so initiatives like PTech, like the rest of the sort of educational sector in New Zealand, looking at digital skills as a platform is really important. I know our government at the moment is talking about shovel-ready projects and the kind of infrastructure projects around building kind of physical infrastructure, but there's also kind of keyboard-ready projects that we could do where you could kick off work around digital in New Zealand at the same time. And those jobs are fun, they're diverse, they pay well. So I'd like to see more focus actually from government on the digital skills readiness and digital skill projects on top of the kind of infrastructure projects that we've seen announced recently.
Thanks for sharing those with us, Mike. On talking about those kind of hands-on experience, I believe, you know, being someone who is hands-on and has a background being in the hands-on in the tech space, I believe that is so important. And just last week, Victoria, myself and the team, we were at an interview for interns, for summer interns, and it was such a great experience to see more and more girls coming into this field. And I love the concept of interns and grads. One, because we touched on it earlier, it's so important to start that relationship and start that support and mentorship early on in women's lives, and not only once we're kind of putting out a job ad and trying to see who's in the catchment area. We want to foster those relationships and understand the talent earlier on in that cycle. And the great thing about grads and interns in bringing them in, and this is what I've really loved to see at ASB, is that you just get stuck in. You know, I've seen grads working in our squads alongside people who have been in this industry for years and are really considered experts in the field, and seeing them sitting side by side coding together on a problem is just so encouraging. And I think that really helps eliminate that concept of the imposter syndrome we were talking about. So I would really love to see more opportunities like that, where we can get people from a very young age hands-on working on these things alongside, you know, other people in the industry. And so another question I have similar around kind of the education industry, and I thought I'll start this one off with you, Mike, and then we can pass it on to Mahsa for her insights. So Jill has shared with us wonderful insights. Thank you. To address the entry barriers for females, what changes to education policies would open more doors into the tech sector?
Well, that's a good question. Look, I think the doors into the tech sector are open. We're hiring, or the whole sector, I think, is hiring additional people, and particularly through the COVID period that we're in and the globe's in and will continue to be in for some time, a lot of companies are increasing their focus on going digital, using AI and tools and technology to improve the outcome of their business. So the demand is always going to be there. I think the door's already open. Education policies, I think I would go back to what I was saying before. I think the government's talking a lot about trades, apprenticeships, and they're very important. I think I'd like to see the same or an equal focus on on-ramps into business for technology-based jobs, digital jobs, jobs where the products are weightless and digital. So, you know, create something, you can create 1 million of them. You don't need any more resources. So I'd just like to see an equal focus on digital as there is on trade.
Yes, that is a very good point, and that would be amazing to see our government work on that. Over to you, Mahsa. Do you have something you'd like to add?
Sure. So I remember at the start of the session, you mentioned about the jobs in the future. So as you mentioned, 85% of jobs in 2030, they don't exist yet. And although we don't know about the jobs, we know that they're highly impacted by digital technology. So it is really important that we focus in digital technology as part of our curriculum. And as I mentioned, and since start of 2020, that is the new digital curriculum rolled out in all the schools. And it is amazing to see it's happening in our primary school section. So we have to start early, but again, we have to provide support, professional development for our teachers. And I think this is very important to see that our government really providing a support for our teachers to be able to teach these curriculum properly in the school. I heard Mike mention about artificial intelligence and why we need to have these diverse teams. So something came to my mind, and that was about why do we really need to have a diverse team, specifically in some of the new branches of technology like artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence, for those that don't know, it's a branch of machine learning. So we're getting computers to solve problem, make decision without human intervention. This is essentially designed to operate without human intervention, but AI system to start with, they have to be created by human set of algorithms, problem solving strategies, and data. So then algorithmic bias, it is really when the human unconscious bias, it's get to your system. So the outcome of the system, it is bias. And I think the only way I can see to start with that we can tackle this problem, it is by having a diverse team of human to start with, to just helping with the more inclusive programs and product in the future. This is really why it is very important. I had an example that I shared in different occasions, but I think it would be really nice to share it again if you haven't heard it before. I had a good friend at Google that a few years back, he shared this example, and it stuck with me about diversity. He mentioned that a few years back when they just released the YouTube app in a different iOS and Google Play, different operating systems. So people started downloading videos using their phone to the YouTube, and they noticed that after a while, a significant number of the videos they uploaded to this app, YouTube app, they're upside down. So the reason for that is if you're right-handed, you hold your phone like that. If you're left-handed, you hold your phone like that. So it just showed that they didn't have anyone left-handed within a development team to test that before releasing it. So it just shows the importance of diversity, not only gender diversity. So we have the diversity in a different levels. And it just really shows that why now we do have women, because half of the population that they're using technologies, they are women. So we need to have them as creator of this technology and not only consumer.
Thank you for sharing that example with us. I think it's so amazing to be able to relate it to a specific story, because it is quite a complex matter, and often people just talk about why we should have diversity of all kinds in our businesses, but don't ever necessarily stop to think why is it so important. And that was really such a good practical example of what, you know, how big you can miss out if you aren't considering all the diverse opinions. Jill has posted a question also to, oh, sorry, not Jill, Robin, to you, Mahsa. She says, thank you all for your time. Just wondering how schools can contact you to take part in your wonderful programs. So actually they're posing this to IBM and She Sharp.
Sure.
Could you share some?
Sure. For She Sharp, you can find all our information shesharp.co.nz. This is our this is our website. So we do have a Facebook page and a Facebook group that you're more than welcome to join to get all the information. We actually just last week we had a session for high school students, only girls, and we interviewed 4 of our ambassadors to share their own journey. It was a very amazing event with over 160 attendees. So we would love to do more of these things, hopefully during this COVID-19. So to just take this opportunity and connect with our students out there. In terms of professional developments for teachers, again, there is a website for it, which is CS4HS, so Computer Science for High Schools. .co.nz, so you will be able to find this information about that. So I will put both of them in a chat for you, so they're both free and you're more than welcome to join both of them.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And Mike, do you have any resources that you would like to share?
Yeah, yes, and love to carry on the conversation with any of the participants. So maybe reach out to me on LinkedIn, and we'll get together and work out how to make this problem go away even faster.
Thank you so much to both of you for sharing your insights on that. So I see Mahsa has shared some links in the chat for those of you that would like to see that. So before we wrap up this event, can I please ask each of you, Mahsa and Mike, for a parting comment to share with us today? And Mike, could I start with you?
For sure. Look, if any of you have daughters or colleagues who you think could be candidates to be in our sector, then I would just encourage you to help them do the things I talked about before. Build a level of aspiration that a job in technology is achievable. Build a level of confidence about their ability to take the journey, and then surround them with some mentorship and help. When I look at this is the second time I've worked at IBM. I returned just recently, but I started out as a hardware guy with a screwdriver. And that's probably the lowest level of engineering and technology in the company. But I was very lucky. I had some great mentors, and I had some great people around me to support me through my career. And I've seen women on the same trajectory. Our global CEO, Ginny Rometty, is a woman. She's just become our chairman. Asia Pacific region in IBM is run by Brenda. Australia, New Zealand, my boss in Australia, Katrina Troughton. So we have women right throughout our organization, but what happened with them? A little bit of aspiration, a little bit of confidence, and some mentorship, and that's how they got there. So I would just encourage you to look around and start pushing these 3 things into some younger people, and we'll see the results. Be very excited about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. And over to you, Mahsa.
Sure. I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much to all of you being here today. I just want to ask you to be a champion of change, be an advocate for women in tech in your organization, in your school. So if you do really care about your future, your children's future, you want to be part of the group working towards a better world, my call is just let's work together. Let's break a stereotype and support equality. And if you need help, so reach out. We can only solve this problem if we work together.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Mahsa. And I have one comment which I often share with my niece, my female co-workers, my team, and my son. Be confident in yourself, because you and your skills are what we need. So it is now time to conclude this event, and it is encouraging to see that we are on the right track to close the STEM gender gap. I believe we will get there much sooner than 100 years if we all do our part to help with this journey. I am hopeful that we can make the difference together. A huge thank you to Mahsa and Mike for your insights. Thank you to all of our attendees for your questions and participation. And thank you, Global Women, for organizing this event. In these uncertain and challenging times, please do stay safe and care for one another. Kia kaha.